Is Sony taking away your games? There was a huge game reveal over the weekend that no one was expecting, and CD Projekt Red wants you to know that they are nowhere near done with Cyberpunk 2077 just yet. And rounding all this news out, Sony just dropped another $1 billion into Epic Games, and I'm gonna tell you why I think they're doing it. I'm surprised this news is slipping through the cracks, but Sony just invested another $1 billion into Epic Games, which brings their total investment to around $1.45 billion, because back in 2020, they did $250 million, in 2021, they did $200 million, and I guess they were happy with what they got out of that because now they invested another $1 billion. Interestingly, the parent company of Lego also invested a ton of money into Epic Games, which makes a lot of sense because Epic is basically the people who aren't getting hated on for doing metaverse stuff. Like if you look at Fortnite, there is just so much IP under that Fortnite banner. And if you look at Lego, there is also a ton of IP in just Lego sets and video games under their banner. But the thing that got me thinking here is why would Sony want to invest so much money into Epic Games? Because Fortnite is never going to be exclusive to the PlayStation platform. It is just way too big, and I feel like making it exclusive to one console is kind of antithetical to what they're trying to do, which is make it the biggest game on planet Earth with everything you could ever imagine, from Star Wars all the way down to Marvel and DC. And traditionally with their first party games, Sony has used in-house engines versus something like Unreal Engine 4 or now 5. And the reasoning for that is really simple. If you're using your own in-house engine on a new game like Ghost of Tsushima 2 versus using Unreal Engine 5, every time you sell a copy of Ghost of Tsushima 2, you don't have to pay a royalty to Epic Games because you're using their engine. But recently we've seen Sony become more open to using other engines, like Unreal Engine 4 specifically was used in Days Gone. And I don't know if you guys noticed this, but Sony sells a lot of games. So while if you look at one individual sale, the royalty cost of using Unreal Engine 4 might be small, when you take that and times it by millions, which is how many copies Sony games sell, that number goes up exponentially. So Sony is combating that by investing money into Epic Games, because not only will they reduce the amount of royalties they have to pay to Epic every time they use that engine in a Sony game, they'll also make money on literally any other game that uses Unreal Engine 5. Like the new Tomb Raider game, for example, is using Unreal Engine 5, even though that's not going to be a first-party exclusive for PlayStation, and Crystal Dynamics and Square Enix are making it. Because Sony owns a big chunk of Epic Games, they will get some of the kickbacks from the royalty money that Square Enix has to pay Epic Games. It's kind of confusing, but it's a good way for Sony to make money instead of losing a ton of it by using these other engines. And it looks like Unreal Engine 5 is going to be the engine to beat this generation, because not only is the new Tomb Raider using it, but also the fourth game in the Witcher series is switching from the proprietary CD Projekt Red engine over to Unreal Engine 5, which is actually a pretty big move. And if you're trying to hire a bunch of people to come work on your game, using a common engine that a lot of developers have worked on, like Unreal Engine 5, versus something super niche like CryEngine, for example, is just a good way to get more people in while it's tough to hire people. So yeah, while on the surface this doesn't really seem like that big of a deal, I think this move is going to pay off big time for Sony in the near future. Real quick before I jump into the next story, guys, I'm working so hard to get this channel to 100,000 subscribers. So if you've been watching the videos here on the channel and enjoying them, make sure you let me know by subscribing and setting your notifications to all. So one of the games I was most excited for last year was Back 4 Blood. One of my favorite games growing up was Left 4 Dead 2. I'm a huge horror fan, and hearing that Turtle Rock Studios was making a spiritual successor to the Left 4 Dead franchise, while Valve is just currently apparently not making one, was more than enough to get me really excited. I played the beta with my friends, I liked what I saw, I pre-ordered the Ultimate Edition of the game, and then when it came out, it felt like a good platform that Turtle Rock could build on top of and make something truly great, but it had a few issues they really needed to work out before I could call it great. The first big issue I had with the game was that during the beta, the veteran mode felt too easy. You know, veteran mode is for veterans of the Left 4 Dead franchise, and then when the game came out, I was expecting it to be tuned a little bit more difficult, but then when you jumped into the veteran mode, it was nearly impossible to get through just one act of the campaign without being killed and reset to the beginning of an act. So I ran through the entire campaign on the recruit difficulty, which instead of being the right difficulty was way too easy, but I got through it, I leveled up, I got some cards, I got some good upgrades, and then I was able to make it through the veteran mode, but it was definitely by the skin of my teeth. Like, it still felt like an extremely difficult mode. The other issue I had was that there were too many special infected. Like, the archetypes were there, right? Like, they just took a lot of the special infected from Left 4 Dead and then put them in Back 4 Blood, but then they had like different versions of them that had different weak points. It just felt like you had to juggle too much while you were playing the game. There were a ton of other smaller issues on top of that they were kind of quick to fix, but I was just sitting there like, yeah, I've sunk a lot of time into this. I'm gonna wait and see if they fix this up, add enough content in for me to come back. So since I kind of dropped off last year, they've had a ton of patches, they've had a Christmas event, they've added in a little bit of new content, but the first big DLC drop is happening right now with Tunnels of Terror, and it looks cool. I just don't know if it's going to be enough to bring people back. This is definitely a PvE update. It's bringing in 2 new cleaners. It's bringing in a lot of weapons. You'd think that because it's called Tunnels of Terror, it's going to bring in new maps, but it's really just adding new paths into the maps that are currently in the game, which is sort of a good and bad scenario because people are kind of getting sick of the maps the game launched with back in October. I'm willing to try it out because I did pay quite a lot of money for that Ultimate Edition, but that doesn't really seem like a good reason to want to come back to a game. Everything I'm seeing is cool, but it definitely just looks like more Back 4 Blood instead of more of a recalibration to get it closer to being a true Left 4 Dead 3, which is what everyone wants. Now, as far as I know, there's no way to see how many people are playing a game on PlayStation, so the next best thing is going over to Steam charts, and when I checked that earlier today, it went from around 1,000 people, which is where it was at yesterday, to 5,000 people concurrently playing the game. Now, that's definitely not enough to completely support a full community for Back 4 Blood, but you gotta consider that this game is on Game Pass on both PC and Xbox Series X. I'd imagine the community on PlayStation is also pretty big just because the game has gone on sale for as low as like $10 recently, and it has full crossplay. So I think the community is probably there to support it, but it doesn't seem like enough people are jumping back in on Steam to really call this expansion a huge success. Honestly, it reminds me of the situation with Avengers where they would release a new expansion like the War for Wakanda expansion. A few people would jump in, enjoy the new content for a week or two, and then bounce off. I'm not going to stick on this too much longer, but the thing they really need to add to Back 4 Blood is a versus mode. That was the best part of Left 4 Dead back in the day, and it is baffling to me that they thought they could release a game that they are coming out and saying is a spiritual successor to Left 4 Dead without some form of versus mode. Even if they have to delay content that's on their roadmap that's in this Ultimate Edition or whatever, I'd be fine with it if they just said we're delaying that or even canceling it so we can get a versus mode in this game, because the gunplay is there, the level design is there, the graphics are there, like all the pieces are in the game that need to be there. They just need to add in a versus mode. It is so important to a game like this, and it just seems crazy to me that they're still so resistant to it after losing this many players. So over the weekend during the 20th anniversary Kingdom Hearts stream, I'm sure you've seen by now that Kingdom Hearts 4 was announced. That's a big deal for a lot of reasons, because for a ton of people that were in my age group, Kingdom Hearts was one of their favorite games when they were a kid, and that saga kind of seemed like it came to an end with Kingdom Hearts 3. But I guess that game sold better than Square Enix wanted it to, because it's official. They're working on Kingdom Hearts 4, and interestingly enough, going back to Epic Games, they're using Unreal Engine 5 for this new game, and it looks like it's getting a pretty big graphics jump over Kingdom Hearts 3. Kingdom Hearts is kind of a blind spot for me, but when Kingdom Hearts 3 was coming out, I decided to watch a synopsis of the entire plot of the series on YouTube, and then I jumped into 3 because I'm a huge Pixar fan and they added in Toy Story and stuff, and I thought it was pretty cool. I actually want to go back and play the other games eventually, and hearing that they're making more of them with Kingdom Hearts 4 is enough to get me excited to go back and finally do it. So what initially pulled me into this trailer was seeing Sora's new outfit. It's more modernized, it looks more real. He's not wearing giant clown shoes anymore. It actually looks like he's just in the normal real world. That all roped me in initially, right? But the thing that really got me hooked and made me want to go back and play the other games is this one screenshot where up in the right corner, you can definitely see the foot of an AT-ST from Star Wars. And yeah, Star Wars is my favorite thing in the entire world, so the idea of it crossing over with Kingdom Hearts basically means I'm legally obligated to play it. So yeah, I'm gonna go through the entire series before this game comes out in 2030 because they take a long time to make. So now that the 1.52 patch for Cyberpunk 2077 is past us, people are kind of wondering if CD Projekt Red is going to finish out the promises they've made with expansions and free DLCs, or if they're just gonna take the easy way out and move on to the next game because of how disastrous the launch for Cyberpunk Cyberpunk went. Honestly, after completing the game when it came out and then putting 10 hours into this new update and seeing how much better Cyberpunk is now than when it was released, I really want to see what else they can add to this world. I would personally love to see a new expansion, so that's why I'm excited to see that CD Projekt Red has confirmed that they are working on an expansion for Cyberpunk 2077. The confirmation comes from the quest director Powell Sasko, and he said in a recent live stream, "We're working on stuff for you." Like, I'm literally daily reviewing quests, talking to people about stuff, so it is happening. I cannot tell you anything about our future plans, but I can assure you we are working on expansions. We're working on stuff for you guys. So that's pretty much as clear of a confirmation as we're going to get, and I'm just super stoked to see what they do with DLC for this game, because CD Projekt Red totally excels with DLC. Like the base game of The Witcher 3 was great, but Hearts of Stone made it even better, and then Blood and Wine was like a 50-hour extra game that just rounded out Geralt's story over the entire Witcher franchise. Like, you got to have your own vineyard and a completely new map, and it added in a ton of gameplay elements that no one ever thought would happen in an expansion. And Cyberpunk is in an even better spot to have something like that happen, because the base game is good, but if they could really expand it and do what they promised initially when the game was announced in DLC, that'll totally fix this redemption arc that they're currently on. Like, that'll really put CD Projekt Red back where they were before Cyberpunk came out and was a complete disaster. So yeah, while I'm sure there are a lot of people who would just like it if CD Projekt Red moved on and started working on The Witcher 4 because they've heard so much about Cyberpunk over the past couple years, I personally, and I think a lot of people who jumped into this new update, really want to see what they can do with a new expansion. So I'm glad they're working on it. Sony's been doing a little bit of damage control around this whole PS Plus thing, where they're upgrading it but really just making it more expensive, and the features they're adding aren't exactly what people wanted. Like, we're getting PS1, PS2, and PSP games. Those are going to be downloadable to the PS5, but you need to subscribe to this premium service to get them, even if you had bought these games previously on your PSP, your PS Vita, or your PS3. I'm not even going to go into the PS3 emulation thing because I feel like that's been done to death at this point, but now people are reporting that these PS1 classics that they already bought are having major issues on consoles that can play them. The reason people notice this is because there's a remaster of Chrono Cross which just came out on the PS5, and apparently, even though it's supposed to run at 60 frames per second, it runs somewhere between 30 and 45 at most times. So a lot of people are just going back to the PS1 classic to play it that way because it runs pretty much like it did on the PlayStation 1, if not better. But when they go to start up the PS1 classic version, they're met with a weird error that says they no longer have a license to play the game. So with these PS1 classics, because some of them were given away in the past with PS Plus subscriptions, a lot of them will have an expiration date tied to it that you can see if you go into the more detailed menu that shows you all the information about the game. Now, for games that you acquired through a PS Plus subscription, the expiration date is usually set for whenever your PS Plus subscription ends. But specifically with Chrono Cross and a lot of other games, the expiration date is set at 12/31/1969. Now, no one really knows why this is happening. It's kind of weird that the date is set so far in the past, because you could literally set it to like March 3rd, 2021, and it would still be expired because that's in the past. But I think at this point, it's fair to give Sony the benefit of the doubt on this one. I don't think they're going to revoke licenses for all these games, especially while you can still download them from the PlayStation Store on your Vita, on your PSP, on your PS3. It just doesn't seem like something they would do. And as we've all seen, ever since the PSN was made, Sony is not the best at working with online environments. There have been a lot of issues, like back in the day when the PSN went down for pretty much an entire summer and Sony had to give away a ton of games. Of course, this is getting sensationalized because there was one guy in the Reddit thread who said he doesn't have access to all of his PSP games, but then there are a ton of other people who are just saying this happens with certain games, so who knows? I don't know what's going to happen with this. Sony has not responded to it, but I think they're going to have to respond soon, because if this is the case and they're going to revoke all of the digital access to all these games before the new version of PS Plus comes out and just say, yeah, we're taking away all these games from people who already bought them, but they'll get access to them if they just give us $120 a year, I don't need to say how bad of a PR look that's going to be for Sony.